This piece is entitled Adult Sandcastle, and the other title is City of Sand, because I was watching children on the beach make their childish sandcastles, and it just made me think of cities and how they're built on a totally different scale, but how they're kind of the next step in the evolution. You know, people go from sandcastles to these giant structures. And so, as you can see, it was cast in sand. So it was like an opposite of a sandcastle. Instead of going up, it went down. And it's cast in concrete. And part of the reason, again, is because the tactile quality is so important. The smell is so important. And if you see any little scraps of concrete and you want to taste them, you can. They have a really great crunch to them. I mean, do it at your own risk, but it just makes the whole thing come to life. And so the idea of these slabs, these monoliths, unlike a child's sandcastle, where they're carefully building something either to resemble a structure or maybe an imaginary fairyland, these are just shooting up out of the ground, kind of like in a tectonic process, so that they're almost like a natural element, only they're completely artificial and man-made. And then you see they're not all the same, but they're mostly the same. These are all the same. Then we have a round one, but it's all crowded in here, so it doesn't have a chance really to have individuality. And if you think about life in these buildings, you see all you ever do is look in other windows. So that's a sad element. Here you see something rising up, which is almost like a human figure, as if the human figure is trying to rise up amidst all of this hard, rough, inwardly facing material. On this side, I don't know if you can see it from there, but there are two areas that are darker. And those are really symbolic of a sandcastle when the waves start to come in. And they start to come in, and you notice it makes the sand dark, and after a while, it will make it all dissolve. And global warming is starting to do that. You can have New York City, this city of steel and glass, and if the water level rises, it will dissolve New York City just as easy as it would dissolve a sandcastle like this. So it has many different meanings, but once again, I urge you to explore it by touching it, by smelling it, and if you're careful, tasting it, because it gives you a different impression. It's a more holistic experience than just looking at it. But if you do look at it from different angles too. Look at it down here. Look at it through the structures. See areas like this where you can't really see between the structures, so they almost create a wall. And try to open yourself up and see what feeling this brings out in you about the man-made built world.
Can you talk about the scale?
Well, the scale, once again, it's to relate to the size of something that a child might do. And so if it had been done on a massive scale, you would appreciate it differently. Once again, as I did with the other pieces, I wanted to take things out of context. And by miniaturizing them, that's one way that in doing the sizes that you do that. Look at the Claes Oldenburg bow and arrow. He blows things up, he takes them out of context. But you can look at children's toys, you know, little Barbie dream house, something like that, where everything's taken small, and that immediately makes it relate differently to the rest of the world. And so I chose to make this on the small side so that you would almost feel like a giant. You would once again get that great feeling that people get when they build the skyscrapers, that they are somehow giants, that they can build these things. Whereas at the same time, you look at the finished piece and it's very small. And so it makes you question your own size and placement in the universe.
And what came first when you were approaching this piece, the material or the concept?
I think the concept came first on this because I was watching children making the sandcastles and thinking, what are those kids going to be doing in 20 or 30 years? Are they still going to be building things? Or there's always the kid who's running around stomping on the castles, destroying them, or are they going to be destroying them? So that's the other element of that, is that, you know, you can build these and you can destroy them, and that's how the world is working. And as a matter of fact, as you come by, there are some loose pieces up here, and if you want to pick at them, if you want to chew on them, if you want to just put them on here. Your little part of the destruction, once again, that's part of the process for you to be involved in it.
So the interactivity of the piece is important to you?
I think it's important in all art, really. I mean, even art that's just visual and they tell you don't to touch, you're being there. It's like the scientific theory that just something being watched changes it. But in this case, I urge you to be more proactive in it and not just watch it to change it, but, you know, feel it, rub against it, add something to it. I mean, if there's something in your pocket that you think would go well with it, let's see, what do I have here? I have like a keychain here. You might decide that works very well there. And then the next person might come by and go, what is that doing there? That doesn't belong there. That belongs like this. And then that's also because that's how cities are built too. It's not one person, it's a lot of people contributing to them. So feel free to interact with the objects and add to them or rub them apart or just, you know, put your input in them because that's important.